Well, some have accused me of being a bit of a whiner, and this month I really am. I get to hang out with a scientist that studies grapes and wine, and that's Dr. Sarah Lauder. Hey, Doc.
How's it going?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad that you're able to join us this month, because here's the thing I want the folks at home to think about. Before they open that bottle of wine up and consume it and enjoy that, I want them to think about some of the things that go into preparing those grapes to be harvested, and that's something that you focus on from the fungicide part of this. Doc, tell me a little something about what goes into protecting these grapes and some of the things that you do.
Absolutely. So here we have our nice grapevine, which we've grown up onto the trellis system because it is a vine. It does need that support. And this helps kind of, one, push your grape leaves out and kind of get your clusters where you can get them, and hopefully you can get some fungicides in there in order to help control grape powdery mildew. Okay. This is a fungus which can grow on any of the green living tissue of the grapevine. So it can grow on your grape berries, which this is gonna, influence the wine that you produce. You don't necessarily want to eat this, which later in the season, if this had continued to develop, this has also probably caused some berry splitting and you get extra rots on it.
And what's so interesting about this, Sarah, is that when I see pretend grapes in a store on a mantle somewhere and they have this dust looking stuff on it, that's not a good thing. You're saying that is bad. This is a mildew. Mm-hmm. But I think about mildew when it's very, very wet. You're saying this grows where it's dry?
Yeah, so the white powdery look of powdery mildew is coming from the spores that carry their own water with them. And so while they like humidity, they don't like that free water because they already got the water they need to get started. So they'll fly away. It's a wind disperse, so it'll go disperse out and try to find some grape tissue that it can land on and grow on. And hopefully survive.
Right, and that's something you're worried about. That's something that growers in Georgia are worried about, and that's something I want to talk about next here is what do you do about that? And not only that, but also maybe even some of the, I'm seeing Japanese beetles up here eating away at these wonderful leaves. You're probably worried about that too, and I want the folks at home to think about things that scientists are doing to protect these plants. So let's go there next. Wouldn't you know it, here we are out taping the segment and a fan of the show approaches. Now, Sarah, you and I were just talking about some of the bad things that can influence that vegetation. Walk me through this contraption and what it's doing to ward off some of that stuff.
Absolutely. So this is an air blast sprayer, which is what is often used to apply fungicides to grapes. Even in organic vineyards, you're still often applying fungicides. It just depends on the products you're using. But you have your tank here, which is where you're going to mix that fungicide with water. And then it's going to get pushed through and circulated into these nozzles, which are going to spray out. And that pressure is pressurized by the fan to help blast that into those big canopies so you can get some good coverage on the inside.
And we're talking about not only a farm like might be in Georgia, 4 or 5 acres, but even a bigger farm these are being used on. Just how often you want to refill the tank, I guess, is something. We were looking at those grapes. Those were the red variety of grapes. Is that a type that is most susceptible to the bad stuff, or are we thinking more about the sweeter Georgia muscadine? What would you say to compare those?
So we were looking at some red hybrid grapes, which are hybridized from some of your more well-known European grape varieties that are very susceptible, with some more American native varieties. And we have a lot of American native varieties that can be a lot more resistant to a lot of the disease, like muscadines, as well as some other grape varieties that are maybe a little less well known.
Good, good. And that's something I want to do next, is I want to talk about some of the things being done in Georgia, being grown here, that are more resistant to some of that disease. So let's go there next. Well, you heard us briefly mention muscadines, and we're in a muscadine vineyard now. And Sarah, I want to talk California versus Georgia. What makes Georgia an ideal place for growing grapes versus California?
Yeah, so here, muscadines, Georgia is the largest producer of muscadines in the world, muscadines are native to the southeast, but they're kind of like the difference between a horse and a donkey, where we have different numbers of chromosomes. It's a whole different species. And a lot of what makes growing muscadines great is because it's resistant to a lot of the diseases that's grown out here. But we can see some of the differences in the formation of the grapes, where we have serrated leaves, we have smooth bark, and it can also handle some very high vigor. We have a very big vine here growing up in this area here. But you can see some of this grape, and some of that is used to help reduce the berries. So we have some younger berries growing up in this canopy that as they are developing, they're still developing our fruit here. And then you're gonna, when we get into August, we're gonna be getting into veraison and some of our berry ripening stages. And as those berries ripen, they're gonna develop sugars as they go. And when we harvest our muscadines, they're gonna be very, very high sugars.
I was gonna say very sweet, huh?
Very sweet, very high in sugar. And so when you take those muscadines and you make wine out of them, sometimes the yeasts that are going to form your alcohol are not going to absorb, not going to use all of the sugar that's left in that grape juice. And that's some of the reasons, or one of the ways that you can get some of your more sweeter wines.
And that's what's so special about Georgia. The muscadine grapes, those acidic soils. This has been really great. I'm ready for a glass right now. Sarah, thanks for today. I so much appreciate you. And y'all, you know what to do. While you're online looking up things you can cook with that muscadine vine and that muscadine wine, check out the Ranger Nick Facebook page, see what I've got going on there. Until next time, for the Farm Monitor, I'm Ranger Nick, reminding you, as I always do, that enthusiasm is contagious. So pass it on. Y'all, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you right back here again, this time next month. See ya.